that they've ghosted you is enough information you need to know about who they are for you to choose otherwise and to choose yourself and to love on yourself. I would not dwell on to why somebody has left or ghosted me. The people who are leaving and have decided to leave, let them go. Why do guys ghost? That is the question. A very, very warm welcome. My name is Eric. If you're new here, Ask Eric is a platform where you and I have conversations about issues of everyday life. It's something that you find puzzling. You've tried to suss it out within yourself and then without yourself, through your friends, and then you've gone on the internet and they're just like, why don't I just ask Eric? Let me just ask. So that's what this platform is about. And I love today's question. Why is it that guys or girls ghost? Again, none of us have all the answers. When we both know better, we do better. So I can't wait to hear from you why you ghosted him. Why did you ghost him? I remember a lady once told me that guy was chewing funny. We could start with some definitions. Ghosting is simply when somebody you've been talking to essentially disappears from the face of the earth. They stop communicating without an explanation. They just stop. They used to say, good morning, sunshine. How are you, sunshine? Hi, beautiful. Hi, beautiful. And they're laddening your phone and sending you memes and sending you reels. All of a sudden, one morning you wake up, they're gone. So you've been ghosted. Welcome to the ghosted world. So I think for me, I love to make these conversations as subjective and also as objective as I can. I rarely have ghosted people because I pride myself for being very communicative. But once I've communicated, be it disinterest, lack of want to, and the person is insistent, they're hell bent on continuing things as they were, then I find myself slowly withdrawing. Or maybe my communication will topple down. So I am not the biggest fan of ghosting. But I know from conversation and my reading, I'll tell you a story at the tail end about a personal story and how I ghosted somebody. But I think sometimes men generally just don't like conflict. And men try to avoid tears. Okay? Because a lot of women are very emotional. And if you broach the subject about, oh, this is not working, I'm not going to be talking to you from Tuesday at 8 a.m., they'll be like, why? And because men don't know what to do with that, so they just quietly fizzle out. And I'm sure the same can be said about women. You don't want this guy to become aggressive. Some guys, unfortunately, can even get physical. So what you decide to do is to reject them from a distance and ghost them. But I think it suffices to say that the ghoster who has ghosted you has very little to do with you being off. Sometimes you're off, but the ghoster ghosts you because of their own reasons. And I think a lot of us start asking, what is it about me? How come 11 people have ghosted me? And that I think that thinking is injurious. You are doing yourself a great disservice. I think as an adult, the damn thing would be to sit across from somebody you've developed, you had feelings for, and now you've developed sort of contrary feelings about, and tell them, you know what, I enjoyed talking to you, but I feel like, my feelings have sort of weared off. I don't feel the same about you. Or I'm going through something very menacing right now. We have a death in the family. I cannot communicate with the same regularity I used to. Or to be present and to be very honest at the present moment, I am very busy with work. I can't talk. Okay? It's not that I'm disinterested, but I just can't talk. Why do I say this? Communication is a form of respect. Okay? You cannot say that, I just kept quiet and I hoped you'd figure it out. Absolutely not. We are not animals. We are the only animals in the animal kingdom who've been bequeathed the ability to converse with words. Cows don't do that. And so you want to use your mouth words to have conversations, even conversations that are difficult. That is the adult thing to do. Okay? So now that we've gotten that out of the way, that they ghosted you doesn't show any smark on you. It's on them. That is their issue. It is not your issue. They're the ones who've decided to act childlike and ghost you. Don't put it on you. But why are they ghosting? Becomes the question. First thing I said, to avoid conflict. The second thing would be it's a myriad of issues. And sometimes, if you're being honest, the issue is on you. I'll give you an example. One time I was getting to know this woman and I liked her. She was a wonderful woman. She used to tick all the contours of my needs. But I'm a devout Christian, or most of the time I try to be. And so I came up with an excellent idea that maybe if I took her to church a bunch of times, I would make her as Christian as I was, which is a horrible idea, by the way. You're not the savior, you're just a human being. And so a couple of church visits later, she told me, Derek, I really appreciate that you like going to church and clapping your hand and this reading the Bible business, but that's just not for me. I love you, right? You're an amazing guy, and I hope we build a great future together. But you can do your church thing. Me, I'll be doing my other things, And it pained me a great deal. And I thought to myself, is there another way that this woman can become a Christian? Because in the canonical book, I am told not to be unequally yoked with an unbeliever, but I have to make her a believer so that we are yoked. And the more I pushed the subject, the more she shoved it. And so I hit a wall and I had to make a decision. So what was the decision? It was a painful decision. I said, you know what? I feel like we are not psychologically aligned. We are obviously not spiritually aligned. And while you tick a lot of boxes up to 90%, the 10% you don't tick makes the 90% for me. Okay? And so we ended things. It wasn't amicable, but I ended things. So maybe a couple of years later, after I'd scoured the dating market for long, I scoured. A friend of mine told me, you and that person really had chemistry. You gelled fantabulously well. So maybe you should hit her up and see if she's still available. And I thought, yeah, she was fairly decent because I'd met some riffraffs, So I said, she was generally decent. I'd completely forgotten that 10% that was a 90% for me. And I think maybe a couple of years, many years later, I reached out to them and I said, hey, how are you? Can we grab coffee? And they just concluded a relationship. And I said, how do you feel about us patching things up? And then it was made very clear to me why we broke up in the first place. When we go to the subject of faith and God and church attendance and prayer, she was as solid against that sort of stuff as she had been before. And I was just like, what a fool. What am I doing? I had to really rescind my mind. And, there were conversations around, I've seen families where the dad is a drunkard and the mom goes to church. And I don't know what the big deal with you and having the need for both of you to do this. So, you can just do your church stuff and let her do her stuff. But I was just like, no, I think down the road it's going to be a big problem. It's going to be a big problem. I've grown old enough to know that if you're not aligned in the things that are important, then it becomes a big problem. And it's not just about church attendance. It's agreements around all the leads of your life, psychologically, socially, spiritually, financially, sexually. You must agree. There's a wonderful scripture in the Bible that I like. In Amos 3:3 says, how can two people walk together? Walking together meaning dwelling together. Because if we have to live here with you and go to Malindi, it's dwelling. We have to use the same lavatories. We have to use the same restaurants. From here to Malindi, it's quite a journey. So how can you two then dwell together if and until you agree? And so if you start off the relationship and you're completely asunder, especially about things that are very important to you. Now when you're young and you're hip and you're jolly and you're feeling mellow, it doesn't hurt. But when you go down the road, there are decisions that are not black and white. There are decisions that are gray. And now both of you have to compromise, or one of you have to compromise, and then it comes and does what? And bites you. So I've gone on a tangent, but the point I'm trying to make is that is the one time I did not ghost, but I said, I feel a bit off and bored, and I will discontinue this conversation. And it sort of just died out because I came to the realization that, first of all, it's futile to try and change somebody to believe the way I believe. And second of all, it's not my place to demand that people change, because that's not a very good perimeter to start a relationship. Because what else are they going to give up? Okay, I believe that happiness is accepting who people are and taking them for who they are. So if they have to change something for you to accept them, then maybe you're not right for them. And so you can count your losses. So yes, so people ghost for different reasons. One, they want to avoid conflict. Secondly, it's possible something that is happening to them. Maybe financially you have a monstrous appetite and you like to try out restaurants. And your way to be loved is gifts and words of affirmation while eating cheeseburger in a restaurant. And so now he just lost his job, and it's a very difficult time for her, and she can't express it because she's very vulnerable about that position she's in. So what does she do? Silence. Okay. There are also very personal things that people don't share. For instance, I had a very good friend of mine. We were friends for over 15 years, and she moved countries, and I tried to regularize our communication, and it just fizzled out. To this day, I've never known what the issue was. God knows we didn't fight. God knows we didn't have a difference of opinion. So sometimes it's possible that people just grow away from you, and they just grow silent. And there's a wonderful book, if you find time, you read it. A lady called Mel Robbins, I think. She wrote this book called Let Them. She says there are three things that accentuate friendships and relationships. Number one, she says, proximity. That means if I am closest to you with the regularity of often I see you, it enhances our relationship. Okay? And she gives a wonderful example that if two people are neighbors from across each other, they would be closer in comparison to 5 blocks away, for simple reason that proximity favors them. The second thing she said, which I think is important about this ghosting phenomena, is energy. Sometimes our energies just shift. And so it behooves you to read the room to see, has this person's energy shifted? Okay? So if we are not aligned, and energy shifts because of different reasons. For instance, you're in a space where you have a newborn, and your bosom bad friend who you're with in high school still wants to go and grab a beer and watch a particular sport, which was your modus operandi for the longest time. But now your energy has shifted because of a baby. Your girlfriend or wife or partner expects you at home to change the diapers. And so it strains the relationship because energetically you're not in a space for watching football. You get the drift? Okay, so the first, she said, proximity, second, energy, and third, timing. Sometimes our timings are just off. And timing can be, a best example of timing is a friend I've just told you about. She moved to a faraway country. Of course, different interests have developed. We don't meet as often as we used to. Our regularized activities have, of course, been disrupted. And so the relationship fizzles. So it's possible that the person who's ghosted you has lost the 3 or 2 or 1 of those. Energy has shifted, proximity has been severed, and timing is possibly off. Okay? And when you're about to blame, because it's always easy to blame. The other thing, which is very important, is that they're dealing with something personal. My mom passed on 10 years now. And I remember I was getting to know somebody. And that was a new experience. I'd never had a death in the family or anybody close to me. I don't even think I'd lost a friend. And it was so pregnant, the pain was palpable, that it shattered and changed me tremendously. And I remember the lady I was getting to know at that present moment was very helpful. She called me a few times and said, If you'd want, can I, take you for the burial? How can I be of help? Basically. But I was so inside out. I was turned inside out with grief that I didn't have a proper pathway to communicate, that I was not going to pursue some things I was pursuing. Not just her, the habits I'd had, maybe wasting time and shooting the breeze with friends into the wee hours of the morning. That completely changed. But I didn't have the vocabulary to tell her that, from now hence, I'm going to pursue a different path. You understand what I mean? So sometimes people ghost because of something very, very painful to them. Death of a loved one, loss of a job, um, maybe depression. They have maybe a mental health challenge that they're dealing with. And you sitting there and deciding that they've ghosted me because I'm a bad person or because they are weird. Sometimes it's not even that, okay? But you, the ghoster, I would say, find it in yourself, especially if it's nothing as deep as what we've discussed, to just reach out to those people and say, I no longer am going to pursue this conversation. I'm no longer going to pursue this relationship. I'm no longer going to pursue this agenda. Something has changed. How I felt in the beginning is not how I feel right now. The timing is off for me. Our proximity has changed because I have to go all the way to the other city to work. And my energy at the present moment is not giving the vibes that it was giving. Okay? And so you'll pardon me so that I put my ducks in a row. And if time permits us again to be able to kick the ball, we will. But for now, it's just what it is. I think that way is respectful for the person you're having a conversation with, the friendship you're cultivating, or even the romantic relationship you're pursuing. But just completely disappearing and abandoning the ship leaves a lot to be desired on your part. Sometimes people ghost us because they think it will hurt us less. Instead of them telling us the whole truth, they feel like just keeping quiet will hurt less. But of course, we don't interact with pain the same way. Okay? And that would be another reason. I know I've kept quiet in instances where if I told you the truth, it's going to brew a lot more resentment. So I just decide, let me keep it to myself. And the truth would be something you cannot change. Maybe it's just your MO, your modus operandi, your way of being that you can't change, your essence. Okay? A friend of mine told me that he stopped talking to this woman because this woman didn't know where. I think he asked her two questions. One time they were supposed to meet, and he said, "Can we meet at a very popular mall?" And she said, "Where is that? I've never seen that mall." And on the day of the meeting, she kept calling and saying, "Where is the mall?" So my friend said that she couldn't even bother to Google it. It spoke volumes, you know? And another friend told me that he stopped talking to this guy because the guy didn't know who Usain Bolt was. Like, he was completely surprised when she brought up the conversation about Usain Bolt and how he won the Olympics. And the guy was like, "Who is that?" And the chick was just like, "You're not curious enough to know who one of the greatest runners globally is? I don't want to do anything with you." So people keep quiet many times because the truth is more painful to share with you than the silence. If you know what I mean. The truth is just so painful. You're just like, mm-mm. Or maybe it's something very personal, like you have halitosis. When you speak, guys are just like, and nobody has come around to tell you that it's treatable. Or maybe you splash. When you talk with all the animation of your saliva's might, you know? And guys are just like, "Hey, that guy splashed on my salad." So I was eating salad with the garnish plus the saliva, and then I went and vomited. So it's because of many becauses that people ghost. They have self-esteem issues. Honestly, they have self-esteem issues. They're just like, maybe you're not good for them. They are comfortable talking to you on the phone via the text. I remember a guy I used to know used to tell me, "Eric, why don't you text this woman for me with your good English?" And one time, I don't know why we thought it was a good idea. We were younger. We went to meet one of his many women. And the woman kept saying, it's so funny the way you are charming on text, but in person, you're so quiet. Because the guy could not string together words. And so he decided to ghost her because she called his bluff. You see? So sometimes they have self-esteem issues. They're just like, hey, no, this person is better than me. And so they ghost you. So, yeah. So some things you can change. Some truth are hard to share. Maybe you have a patch that is funny for them. Maybe you speak funny. Maybe you don't quite represent the ideal and they can't change that about you. So they just quiet. So I would also say that when people tell you or show you who they are, believe them the first time, as Dr. Maya Angelou used to say, and just keep things moving. You know, that they've ghosted you is enough information you need to know about who they are for you to choose otherwise and to choose yourself and to love on yourself. I would not dwell on to why somebody has left or ghosted me. The people who are leaving and have decided to leave, let them go. Honestly, let them go. I don't think they belong to us if they've decided to leave. If they belonged to us, they would have stayed. That they've left is indicative that they shouldn't be here. So love yourself enough to allow people to leave you. Okay? Some people choose us and we choose others, and some people go, and that's just fine. Just because they don't want you in their bus doesn't mean you're a bad person or they're bad people. They just don't want you in their bus. You get another bus. Okay? What do we have next?